Once upon a time in Enugu State, Nigeria, there lived a tall, handsome man named Aeni. He had just graduated from the University of Benin and moved to Lagos in search of a job after his National Youth Service Corps, NYSC. Aeni was hardworking and soon landed a good-paying job. He loved his work and was loved by his colleagues in return. But there was one thing bothering him. His mother, Ngozi, kept pestering him to get married and give her grandchildren. Welcome to Afro Tales TV, your home for rich, exciting, and inspiring stories from around the world. Today's story will touch your heart and keep you hooked till the very end. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our amazing stories. Every day, Ngozi would call Aeni, urging him to find a wife. She would say, "Aeni, my son, when will you bring a wife home? I want to carry my grandchildren before I leave this world." Aeni would always smile and promise that he would get married soon, even though deep down, he wasn't ready for it. One evening, Aeni met his friend Michael at a lounge after work. As they chatted over drinks, Aeni shared his worries with Michael. Michael, who was already married, understood Aeni's predicament and advised him to be patient. "Don't worry, Aeni," Michael said. "You'll find the right person soon. Just give it time." Michael then teased Aeni about marrying a colleague who was known for her aggressive nature, but Aeni quickly dismissed the idea, jokingly saying, "God forbid, unless you want me dead, Michael." That night, as Aeni scrolled through Instagram, he came across a beautiful girl named Natasha. She had a stunning Instagram page filled with her pictures and videos, and Aeni was intrigued. He noticed that Natasha was a doctor, and he became determined to learn more about her. Aeni followed Natasha and started liking most of her posts. Natasha, who was surprised by the sudden flood of notifications, sent Aeni a message asking if he was trying to bomb her Instagram account. With a smile, Aeni replied, "Will you sue me for liking such a beautiful girl like you?" Natasha, amused by his response, jokingly replied, "If you like me that much, let's get married." Their conversation continued late into the night, with Aeni forgetting about his job the next day. Eventually, they bid each other good night, both smiling as they drifted off to sleep. Aeni couldn't shake off the feeling of happiness as he wondered if Natasha was real. He fell asleep with a smile on his face, excited to see where this new connection would lead. The next morning, Aeni woke up feeling excited to see a message from Natasha on his phone. But to his surprise, when he checked, there was no message from her. He quickly plugged his phone to charge, went to take his bath, and got ready for work. As he was about to leave, he turned on his phone and saw a message from Natasha on Instagram. She greeted him, asking if he had a good night's rest, and teasing him for not asking for her phone number. Aeni smiled at her message and quickly replied with his number, asking her to call him. He then went into his car and drove off to work, eagerly waiting for Natasha's call. Meanwhile, Natasha was in her room, smiling at Aeni's response. She dropped her phone on her bed and went to freshen up for the day. Throughout the day, Aeni kept checking his phone, hoping to hear from Natasha, but she never called or texted him. This made him worry, but he decided to wait patiently, thinking that maybe Natasha was busy with work. After work, Aeni met up with his friend Michael at a lounge, and he told him about Natasha. Michael warned him to be careful with online relationships, suggesting that some people might not be who they claim to be. Despite Michael's warning, Aeni couldn't shake off his feelings for Natasha. When Aeni got home that night, he tried to chat with Natasha on Instagram again, but she still hadn't replied to his previous messages. Feeling disappointed, he put his phone down and went to freshen up before retiring for the day. As Aeni lay in bed, he couldn't help but wonder why Natasha hadn't responded to his messages. Was she really busy? Or was there something else going on? Days turned into weeks, and Aeni found himself eagerly awaiting Natasha's messages and calls. But to his dismay, Natasha never replied to his messages or even called him back. Worried and confused, Aeni decided to take matters into his own hands and try calling Natasha on Instagram. To his relief, Natasha picked up the call, her voice soothing to his ears. Aeni couldn't help but feel happy to finally hear from her. He asked her why she hadn't responded to his messages, and Natasha simply laughed, saying she doesn't call strangers. This puzzled Aeni, as he was certain Natasha had asked for his number. However, Natasha insisted that she had only suggested he should ask for her number instead. Despite the misunderstanding, Aeni and Natasha continued talking, and Natasha eventually gave him her number. Aeni called her immediately to confirm it was indeed her number, and they began talking more frequently. As they got to know each other better, Aeni and Natasha realized they lived in the same area of Lagos. Excited by the prospect of meeting in person, they decided to plan a dinner date at Aeni's house. When Natasha arrived at Aeni's house, he was awestruck by her beauty. She looked even more stunning in person than she did in her pictures. They embraced each other warmly, and Natasha complimented Aeni on his house and his looks, bringing smiles to both their faces. They settled down to talk over drinks, and Aeni suggested they prepare dinner together in the kitchen. However, Natasha's mood suddenly changed at the mention of cooking. She insisted they order food instead, refusing to lift a finger to help in the kitchen. Feeling disappointed but wanting to make the best of the situation, Aeni went ahead to prepare dinner alone, while Natasha watched and documented everything on social media. She went live on TikTok, laughing and chatting with her followers, while Aeni felt increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. Despite his growing unease, Aeni tried to maintain his composure and engage with Natasha as best as he could. But the evening passed by quickly, with Natasha being more focused on her social media presence than on getting to know Aeni. As the clock struck 8 p.m., Aeni gently reminded Natasha that it was time for her to leave. She bid him goodbye and left without much conversation or connection between them. Aeni couldn't believe what had just happened. Throughout the night, Aeni couldn't shake off the feeling of disappointment and confusion. He wondered if Natasha was really the person he thought she was. They hadn't had the chance to talk or connect on a deeper level, and he couldn't help but question whether there was any future for them. Despite his doubts, Aeni decided to give Natasha another chance. He hoped that maybe she was just nervous or having a bad day, and that their next meeting would be better. Little did he know, this decision would lead him down a path filled with even more surprises and revelations about Natasha's true nature. Aeni and Natasha continued talking and soon decided to go on a second date, this time at a nice restaurant. Aeni hoped that things would be different this time, that they would be able to connect on a deeper level and enjoy each other's company without any distractions. The day of the date arrived, and Aeni was the first to arrive at the restaurant. He waited anxiously for Natasha, his heart beating with anticipation. After what felt like an eternity, Natasha finally arrived, looking stunning in a beautiful dress and flashing a bright smile. She apologized for being late, and Aeni assured her that it was fine. They exchanged pleasantries, hugged, and took their seats at the table. The waiter brought the menu, and Aeni asked Natasha to place her order. Natasha glanced through the menu briefly before confidently telling the waiter to bring the most expensive dishes and drinks. Aeni watched silently as Natasha made her extravagant requests, feeling a sense of unease creeping over him. Soon, Natasha took out her phone and asked Aeni to take her pictures. He felt awkward about the situation, but reluctantly complied with her request. As they waited for their food to arrive, Natasha started documenting their date on social media, going live on TikTok, and showing off the expensive dishes and drinks on the table. She laughed and chatted with her followers, completely forgetting that she was there with Aeni. Feeling disappointed and frustrated, Aeni couldn't bear to stay any longer. He stood up abruptly, paid for the dishes, and left the restaurant without saying a word to Natasha. Natasha didn't even notice that Aeni had left. too engrossed in her social media antics. After some time, Natasha ended her live on TikTok and realized that Aeni was gone. She felt a pang of guilt and worry, realizing that she had been too caught up in her own world to notice his discomfort. She tried calling Aeni, but he didn't pick up. Feeling concerned, Natasha decided to visit Aeni at his house the next day. As Aeni opened the door and saw Natasha standing there, he felt a mix of emotions: anger, frustration, but also a glimmer of hope. Natasha asked why Aeni had left her alone at the restaurant and why he hadn't been picking up her calls. Unable to contain his emotions any longer, Aeni lashed out at Natasha, telling her how her behavior had disappointed him and how he wanted something serious, not just games. Tears welled up in Natasha's eyes as she listened to Aeni's words. She realized that she had hurt him deeply with her actions and vowed to change. She apologized sincerely, promising to be better and to prioritize their relationship. Moved by Natasha's sincerity, Aeni accepted her apology and they reconciled. That night, Natasha passed the night at Aeni's house, putting her phone aside and focusing on spending quality time with him. But even as they cuddled up together, Aeni couldn't shake off the feeling that there were still some challenges ahead. He noticed that Natasha seemed to dislike house chores, but he hoped that with time she would come around and they could build a happy future together. Natasha and Aeni were deeply in love, but Natasha's obsession with TikTok live videos and her reluctance to contribute to household chores continued to strain their relationship. Despite Aeni's patience and hope for change, Natasha's behavior remained unchanged. Aeni often sought advice from his friend Michael, who encouraged him to communicate openly with Natasha and give her a chance to change. However, Aeni's mother, Ngozi, added to the pressure by persistently urging him to propose to Natasha. Aeni was torn between his love for Natasha and his concerns about her behavior. He hesitated to propose to a woman who seemed more focused on social media fame than on building a life together. Eventually, under the pressure from his mother and the desire to move forward with his life, Aeni decided to propose to Natasha. To his relief, Natasha accepted eagerly, and they began planning their wedding. The wedding day arrived, and it was a grand celebration attended by both families and friends. However, amidst the joyous occasion, Mrs. Kayode, Natasha's mother, took Aeni and Natasha aside for a private conversation. Mrs. Kayode expressed her hopes that Natasha would prioritize her role as a wife and focus on building a happy home with Aeni. Natasha nodded in agreement, but Aeni couldn't shake off his worries about whether Natasha would truly change her ways. After the wedding festivities, Aeni and Natasha embarked on their honeymoon. However, instead of enjoying their time together, Aeni became increasingly concerned as Natasha continued to document almost every moment of their trip for social media. Feeling overwhelmed and disheartened, Aeni realized that his fears about Natasha's behavior were coming true. He couldn't ignore the fact that Natasha seemed more interested in her online presence than in their relationship. As the honeymoon progressed, Aeni's sadness grew, and he made the difficult decision to cut their trip short and return home. Natasha was disappointed, but agreed to leave the honeymoon destination earlier than planned. Back home, Natasha's mood was somber, reflecting on the abrupt end to their honeymoon. Aeni couldn't shake off the feeling that he had made a mistake by marrying Natasha. He wondered if he would ever be able to find happiness in their relationship. Despite his doubts, Aeni remained hopeful that Natasha would change for the better. He hoped that with time and patience, they could overcome their differences and build a strong and loving marriage.